The mining charter continues to fall in the spotlight at the mining Lekogtla currently underway in Midrand. There's increasing concern that not all stakeholders in the mining industry have adhered to the mining charter, which calls for transformation within the sector. Well, Mbongeni Muthwa has been covering the event for us. He joins us now. Mbongeni, good afternoon. There are a couple of targets that mining firms have to achieve by this year. Let's start with black ownership and that target of 26%. You've had a word with the mining minister, I believe. What's he saying about the issue of ownership and the fact that we're so far behind?
Absolutely, Devin. The issue of ownership of mines is a very contentious issue in the country. It has been for a while and it continues to be. And the issue there is companies by this year, 2014, were expected in terms of the mining charter to have 26% shareholding in black hands. But in most cases, many of the companies have not reached that target at all. And many of those that claim to have reached that target, it's not unencumbered. In other words, people that own those shares are still settled with massive debts. They borrowed lots of money to buy those shares, and whatever income or dividends they get from the companies, it's all going straight to paying off those debts. In many cases, this has been going on for the past 10 years, and it takes many years for those debts to be cleared, and then they start benefiting. The mining minister, I spoke to him earlier, and he said that this is his concern, and he intends to address this issue at a policy level. At this point, we can take it and listen at exactly what he had to say, Devin.
I think it has to do with the structure of the transactions at the beginning of the dispensation, because it had to be financed from the profits which were made by the mines, and at some point some may not have been that honest with their profits and therefore sabotage effectively the project. So I've got to look at new ways of financing the broad-based empowerment.
Yeah, Mbongeni, interesting. He's talking about the honesty when it comes to profits there. But he's also touched on the apartheid-structured accommodation for miners. Now, this is a very, very important part of the mining charter. What's the feeling of the progress being made on the front of accommodation for miners? Many say it's not impressive.
Devin, evidence is there. If you go to mining areas, what we've seen in the last few years is there's been a serious mushrooming of squatter camps around mining areas where mine workers actually live. What was supposed to happen was, in terms of mining charter, companies were supposed to do away with apartheid-era hostels where mine workers used to share a room, 4 or 5 people, even more in most cases. They're supposed to do away with that either by building single rooms where one miner can live by himself with his spouse or with family if he chooses, or family units where they can bring in their families. But instead, what has happened is mining companies started giving what is called living out allowances. It's around 1,000 rand, 1,500 rand a month that mine workers are given to buy houses of their own, but which house can you buy with that kind of money? So the mine workers have simply taken that money and they go and rent out checks, and so the problem has gotten worse. Minister Ramatlhodi again saying that he is very concerned about this, just like everyone, and he has actually identified how to solve this problem. We can again take a listen at the minister on this issue, Devin.
Part of the problem with the squatting camps has come from the agreement which was reached some years ago with the so-called living out allowance. That created conditions for massive squattering outside the formal structures. And that's why we've been looking at ways and means of, once we deliver the houses, then we withdraw some of the so-called living allowance, so that we put people in proper accommodations.
Mbongeni, finally, I believe you also had the opportunity of chatting to African Union Chair Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, and there's this broader topic of how African governments are dealing with beneficiation of their minerals. What does she have to say about this as AU Chair?
The AU chair, Nkosazana Zuma, was the highlight of this morning's session, David. She didn't mince her words. She was scathing of mining companies, the way they operate around the continent. She said, the mining companies, in many cases, in many instances, their budgets, their legal budgets, the money that they have to pay lawyers to negotiate contracts with governments, is bigger than the budget of the whole government of a country. Hence, they are able to get away with negotiating contracts where they are able to reap all the benefits and the profits that they accrue from mining in that country, and the government gets nothing. Also, she says they underdeclare the amount of minerals that they extract, and also they misrepresent their profits so that they avoid paying taxes. They're always declaring losses when in fact they are making profits. And she says in some instances, in countries where there's oil that has been discovered, local people don't even get jobs because the company comes, puts up a rig, extracts the oil, it puts them onto a ship and then ships it out immediately. No job. So she says the AU is seized with the issue and it wants to intervene to empower the governments to get a better deal. We can take a listen at her as well now, Devin.
This will also depend on the willingness of member states to actually implement the mining vision, because the mining vision wants to integrate the extractive industry into the rest of the economy, and therefore the extractive industry must utilize other commodities within the mining, consumables, other things that they need.
Well, that was Mbongeni Muthwa. Thanks very much. They're speaking to AU Chair Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. Mbongeni, thanks very much indeed for talking to us. More from you in our later bulletins.